guys, and welcome back to the Motor Recon podcast. I'm your host, Adam. I'm joined again today by Rob. As you can see, we are still in lockdown, but I have managed to sort out the cameras so we are the same size at least this week. So you're not just seeing Rob's face for the entire time, if you are watching, that is. What we're going to do today is just look at some of the cars. Obviously, with Electric Revolution obviously coming, we have discussed this a few times. We want to look at some of the cars from perhaps the past that we might want to bring back, or some of the cars that we think would probably suit an electric type or electric variant of it. So the first one being, just to kick us off nicely, is Mini's new little project coming on. It's not been very spoken about at the moment, but Top Gear did announce it, that Mini are planning to make a small Mini again, but only in electric form, which, to be fair, I think is doable. Perhaps not quite as small as the original, but it's a lot smaller than the existing model.
Yeah, I would say that I would add as well that this is, I think, very smart by Mini. I think that if you're going to make a car that is as dinky as the original or as there is about, I think it is the perfect opportunity to make that city little run around with a small electric motor with a small battery. As the original one didn't have that much power anyway, so it means you can make it relatively low power, get some decent range out of a small battery, and more importantly, you're going to be able to cut into that electric market with something that's cool to look at, relatively cost effective to buy, especially once the government grant stuck on top of that.
Yeah.
As you say, it's a good entry level into electric motoring for someone who is style conscious. We've come a long way since the G-Ways, let's put it that way.
Oh, 100%. Now, for me, I would honestly, if they did make it quite as small as the original, I would love one of those. I probably will play on the price a bit because I suspect they'll do it for the nostalgia market at first, to try and tap into people's memories and get the original back out. But if they can, yeah. I don't think it'll be quite as small. I think it'll be there or thereabouts, just because modern safety features and things probably are going to impact on that quite a bit.
Well, I think even say, for example, if they have to, if they, in the vein of sort of in the effort of trying to keep it as small as the original, I wouldn't be at all bothered if they removed the back seats, for example.
No, because they are.
So if it was just a two-seater.
Yeah, they are quite small anyway. So like a fully grown adult might struggle in the back anyway. So it's probably worth doing.
If you're in the market to buy a car that's as tiny as that and will undoubtedly, because of its size, have a relatively small range and not all that much power, chances are you haven't got a family to stuff into it anyways. So in the effort of making it as dinky as possible with the current safety sort of standards that you need to meet, if they have to drop the back seats out to buy space, I say do it.
Yeah, so be it. Yeah, I think that's a cracking idea. I really want to do it. There's no definite date for this car yet. It's just sometime they are doing it. That's all we know so far.
One of the things that's worth noting as well on this one is obviously BMW recently joined Formula E as a works team.
Yeah,
so given that Mini is owned by them, they are no stranger to electric get made. I'm sure it'll be powered by a pretty good and pretty punchy little electric motor, I expect.
Yeah, it'd be quite good. And once solid state batteries become properly, ingrained, I think it'd be ideal.
Yeah.
All right. So that's one that's coming, and I guess obviously with it being an old car anyway, that is something that Mini are bringing back from the dead and making it electric. Is there anything else that you think that you'd like to see come back?
So cars that I would think from the past that should be resurrected out, I think if you're talking about the original Mini and the style that comes with it and everything like that, I think a direct competitor, ironically also from Mini, also from BMW, would be the BMW bubble car.
Yes, the Isetta.
Yeah, the Isetta, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that if you were talking about an extremely small and lightweight car from history that carries a lot of charm with it and quirkiness that could relatively cost effectively be made into a city little electric runaround, I think it is a prime candidate for that.
Oh, of course. I say 3 wheels as well. So, but
yeah.
One at the back, so you can actually put the electric motor at the back like the original was. For those of you who don't know what an Isetta bubble car is, or perhaps too young and maybe not seen one. I know we are too young to have known what it was when it was new, but it was essentially a 3-wheeler, but the single rear wheel at the back, mid-engine completely, but the whole entire front opened as the door. So you basically stepped out of it and the front opened up and the steering wheel was attached to the front. It was a very strange setup, but such a cute little car.
Yeah, so you say now I think the only concern with that is with us obviously talking about how safety might hinder the Mini potentially. I don't know what modern safety regulations will make of a door opening out the front of a car.
Yeah, and also the fact that you are the crumple zone.
Well, that's the thing. As in, I think there would probably have to be more artistic license taken when resto modding, whatever you might want to call it, or bringing back the Isetta, I think.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think they would struggle bringing it back as it is, as in the very same form. There might be some loopholes around it, and again, it might have to grow a little bit just to, put.
But I think it's certainly doable though to keep the three wheels, keep the bubbly design. Granted, you might have to step out the side of it rather than the front. But I think it's doable.
Yeah, if you can make the shape pretty much the same, I think that's the key thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now,
if you can keep the shape, people won't mind.
The original Isetta, to be fair, I mean, it was very, very old. It's originally came out back in 1953, and it was actually done as an ISO Isetta, whose BMW later then took on the name. As you probably guess, it's from Italy, which... no surprise, being that small, they were famous for the small little cars, weren't they? And had a massive 236cc engine which had 9.5 horsepower.
But I think those cars are the ones that are primed for this sort of treatment because they're cars that have nostalgic value.
Yeah.
So they've got a good selling platform. They're tiny and lightweight. And the original didn't have much power anyway. So it doesn't mean the electric one has all that much to live up to as far as performance is concerned.
No, not at all. And I say most people would buy them just for nostalgia. Like I say, you're not going to fit a family of 5 in there, or you're not going to go on a long road trip, are you? So why not?
But, as you say, it means that you can fit a relatively small battery in because chances are they'll be used as runabouts and you can keep the cost down.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
It's the sort of thing that first-time buyers who are, looking for something cool and whatever, if they've, got a bit of money in the pocket and they want to try out electric cars, it's a good entry platform for that. Keeping with the Italian theme, I think the next one we should go on to is the original Fiat 500.
Oh, absolutely. The original Fiat 500, probably one of the most iconic cars of its era. Again, another Italian car, which originally, but I think they did a lot of them in Italy at that time, given it was just after the war. People couldn't afford big cars; they just wanted small little nip arounds that were cheap and easy to build, and that's what they came up with.
Yeah, and in classic Italian style, they were still able, despite that, to keep all of the style and
they had like the
cool factor,
the little baskets on the back, and really go to town. Now, I love an original Fiat 500. You do still see a couple of them knocking around in places like London and specifically Monaco. And they have all sorts. They had like the open top ones, which had like no doors or anything, just the side out. So you can have multiple variants of it as well.
Well, the thing is, I know that Fiat are doing an electric version of the modern version of the Fiat 500. So obviously the modern one that you buy at the shops today, which is a much larger car than the original, obviously for safety reasons. But if they were to do this sort of route, they could definitely square off against the Mini in releasing a Fiat 500 that is similar size to the original, that is of electric cars. And again, like the Mini, if to achieve that size, they need to drop the back seat size.
Well, the back seats in Fiat 500s are actually better than Minis anyway, so they were a master of making them fit. Well, people fit in it. Like I say, I'd be happy if they did drop it and just made it a cool original, and even stick the wicker basket on the back, and
go to town.
Have the full dish wheels rather than the alloys, because they do suit that car.
Yeah,
and they're chrome. But I think that's actually a really good idea. And on a similar vein to that as well, probably more similar to the Isetta one, is the PLP50. I think I'd quite like. Now,
yeah, obviously that's a bit of a novelty car due to maybe it was made famous by Top Gear, obviously.
Yeah. Now I had seen a couple before. They had one at Bewley when I was a kid. Another three wheeler car, so single wheel at the back, but these were absolutely tiny. I mean, these made a bubble car look big. So
Yeah, and these are the sort of things where these are literally, you could make a very, very cheap electric car out of that, should safety regulations allow you to do so.
Yeah. Now these were actually assembled on the Isle of Man, and also then they rebuilt. They actually started. I didn't know this. They restarted to remake them in England in 2010.
Ooh. Well, again, I imagine that's off the back of Top Gear making them very famous.
It was around 2010. I bet someone bought the rights to it, didn't they, and started to recreate it. But it's actually classed as a micro car rather than a normal car. But rear wheel drive, single wheel drive, which stands to reason. But what was it pushing? 49 cc's and 4.2 horsepower.
Not bad. I think one that is currently around that we definitely did want to mention, we both really like this car, actually. We've seen it at Geneva. We saw tons of them at Monaco, is the Renault Twizy.
Absolutely. Now, this is already an electric car, for those who don't know. It's not something that we want bringing back.
And obviously, some of the things to note about it is obviously you can buy a range of them. Top horse-powered version is 18 horsepower, which is more than enough for a car that's so dinky and tiny. And you get a range of about 60-odd miles out of them.
Yeah, but if you're just nipping around the city, it's not so bad, is it?
Yeah, and a top speed of 50 mile an hour. So you could take it on a dual carriageway. Granted, you'd have to obviously be very cautious of how you drive. Wouldn't fancy it on a motorway, but...
I don't think you'd be allowed.
I don't know, they're legally allowed, aren't they?
Yeah, 50 is like it's the minimum-ish speed limit, isn't it?
There's plenty of sort of delivery trucks that are limited to 52 miles an hour in the UK, so...
Yeah, but I suppose it's what do they class a Twizy as? Because if it's classed as a car, then I don't think they're allowed to go that... Well, they can do 50, so if you can do 50, you're all right, but...
That's the thing. I imagine it is just about capable of going on the motorway.
Yeah.
I think.
But I do really, really like a Twizy. So we've sat in a couple over the years, haven't we? And they've done, well, countless different cool liveries. Like they had the Renault F1 livery on it. Now it is a Renault anyway. So they did the Renault F1 livery on it. I don't know who it was. It probably was Renault themselves. They did like the one where they made it look like Formula One cars. So they put a big splitter on the front and rear. They put a big wing on it and big wide wheels. They look really cool. I love those. And you can
we both really like them.
You can actually pick them up now in the UK here, at least, for as little as £4,500, and that's very low mileage. We're talking 7,000 miles, which I'd be so tempted.
I think the trouble with the Twizy is, as close as it is to something I really like, the one problem I've always had with it, particularly if you're running it in the UK, is it's a little too exposed. As in, it could do with full doors.
Well, you can get like a zip-on window that goes around it. So you've got the bottom half of the door and then like a zip-on window at the top, which it kind of probably works. Probably not ideal, but better than nothing.
I mean, that's the thing. If they could do a fully sealed cabin version for sort of slightly colder climes such as the UK, I think they would probably do a little bit better over here, because people who are buying those will probably be using them as their transport all year round. So in winter, you want a cabin that has a little bit of a heater going on, and you can actually have a door that seals up nice and tight.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. To be fair, they should perhaps look at doing that, because they've got the bigger cars like the Zoe and things like that, which they can perhaps use some of the bits from if they need to. But
I don't imagine it'd be all that expensive, because it's nearly there. It's literally just fit some watertight doors. Potentially. I mean, I don't know, but...
They are scissor doors, though, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. It's quite cool, to be fair.
I do like that.
So, yeah, that's one of the present ones that we do actually quite like. Probably moving on to a car that I'm not actually that thrilled with, but I see a market for it, is the Reliant Robin.
Yeah. So I don't mind the Reliant Robin. For those of you who don't know, obviously it's a three-wheel. I don't know where they sold them in the world. I'm guessing quite a lot of locations, perhaps over Europe and stuff, maybe not America. But it was a little three-wheeler vehicle, one single wheel at the front, which meant it was prone to falling over every time it went round corners. And it was made famous here and across the world by the programme Only Fools and Horses. Well, here particularly. If you don't know what that is, I would suggest watching it if you can. It is on Netflix. Quality programme.
But again, it's a prime candidate for this in the respect that the original was lightweight, small, had a tiny engine, and for those people who are interested in them, did have some sort of I don't know, I wouldn't call it cool factor, but collectability about them is probably the right.
I don't know. They've got like a cult following, and some of the stuff the modifier guys do to it are quite good. Like I've seen like a Starsky and Hutch one. I've seen like a Mystery Machine like from Scooby Doo. Obviously, I've seen plenty of the Only Fools and Horses remakes of their van. You name it.
I was able to find just the one Reliant Robin that hadn't been modified for sale on Auto Trader. Believe it or not, it was from 1997, so it's not that old.
No, it was originally produced in 1973 as well, and made right up until 2002. It's a hell of a run.
Yeah. So this is one of the latter models. There's 33,000 miles 33,743 miles on the clock. And it cost you £3,250. So it's held its value relatively well. Again, it's got that collectability to it.
Yeah, that's not bad, is it?
No, not at all.
No, I think for that price, you probably could buy that now, and in a couple of years, maybe sell it for $4,500, $5,000, make a little bit of profit on it. But that means you have to have somewhere to store it and things like that.
Yeah. But again, we think that putting an electric motor in, the only thing I would caution against that one is whether, again, a front-wheeled, three-wheel car would even be allowed today.
Yeah, that is the thing. I suppose they allow tricycles as in bikes, so perhaps...
Yeah.
Actually, that's one thing. You didn't need a car license for Reliant Robin, did you, originally?
No, you didn't.
It was a tricycle, so you could do it on a bike license. That's where the miners bought them originally, because it was something to keep them out the rain in winter when they were going to work. Definitely another one, the Beetle. The original Beetle, hands down, has to be on there. Now, again, personally, I'm not a massive fan of the original Beetle. I see why people were. Obviously, for those of you who don't know the story of where that car came from, I would suggest you go and have a Google. But it was taken...
Yeah,
it was taken on very popular by the hippies in America, and here, I suppose, in the 60s as well. They did all sorts of variants, like the Baja Bugs, which are like beach buggy versions, and you name it. But they're quite a handsome car, I guess, in that sense.
And again, they have that cool and collectability factor that would sell an electric version, which was smaller. I would also chuck into that crowd as well the Citroen 2CV.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that, to be honest.
Yeah, because again, you'll notice a common theme with all these cars. We've gone for obviously the lightweight and we've gone for the low power. But again, the 2CV, although not pretty as such, it does have that collectability factor around it, which would make it appealing, I guess.
Chris Harris loves it, his, doesn't he? Now, again, for those of you who are listening maybe outside of Europe and don't know what those are, they had a nickname over here, which was called the Upside Down Pram. So if you've ever seen a pram from maybe the 50s and 60s, like the old-fashioned big stroller prams, turn it on its head, that's a Citroen 2CV.
Yeah.
Pretty much. But they are, I'd say Google it if you don't know what it is. They're very unique-looking cars, and the suspension on them was unbelievably soft, which was they're very popular with farmers.
But yeah, and again, there's something a little different to some of the other options that we've offered up today as well. So
yeah, very different. And they were all that was front engine, wasn't it? But the Beetle originally was a rear-engined car.
Mm-hmm.
One for me. Now, I know you're not a fan of this car, but I quite like them, which is the Hillman Imp. Now,
yeah,
I'll grant you they're not the best-looking car in the world. I'll go with that. But they made a version of it called the Super Imp, which the naming is a bit unfortunate because imp does mean something a bit different nowadays than what it used to do. But I think I quite like as much as I'm not a massive fan of the styling, I like what it stood for. So it was like they had the rear engine, and they did like a few different versions, like Sunbeam versions, which I think Lotus did tinker with at some point. But don't quote me on that one. I think because, again, they could do them in two-seater. I've seen rally versions of it, so they do work like that. Very, very lightweight cars, like very lightweight. And originally, they only had 875cc, so it's the low-power, lightweight little cars. And they do have a following as well, so I think it would sell quite well.
I think the trouble that the Hillman Imp would fall into is, unlike the original Mini and an original Fiat 500, or even some, the bubble car, whatever, I don't think it's quite famous enough.
Not anywhere else outside the UK.
And the other thing is the crowd that it's quite famous with, I'm not sure whether they would be thrilled with taking up an electric version either.
And I
I think they'd be quite...
Yeah, given like the stuff like the Beetle and 500s and things were popular with hippies, they'd be all over the electric.
Well, I think as well, they're popular with, your average punter as well. I think they're a popular thing for them. So your regular punter would think that's cool and go for it. I think, unfortunately, for the Hillman Imp, it struggles with... It's quite a niche following to begin with.
And I think of its followers,
they're petrol heads.
Yeah.
And they're probably more resistant to moving over to electric technology than the other people who might be interested in the other cars.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. What about sports cars? So cars that are not like R2-seat sports cars are now. It don't have to be an old one or anything like that. Is there anything that you would quite like to see an electric version?
Well, I think... Obviously, one of the prime sort of categories for this is like the Japanese K cars. Obviously, the K cars from Japan are a specific type of car that are allowed in Tokyo, I believe, or something like that.
Yeah, well, I think they don't have to pay certain taxes or anything on them to drive them in Tokyo, whereas in like a bigger car, you perhaps would. So that's why a lot of stuff is very popular over there, like miniature vans, sports cars, normal cars. Everything's tiny, isn't it?
But all of these are primed to get sort of like these electric conversions because, again, they're small, they're lightweight, they would be suited to having a small battery and a small electric motor and sold at a reasonable price.
It wouldn't surprise me if they already are in Japan, to be honest. You don't hear much of it over here because we don't really have K cars, but it wouldn't surprise me if they are.
One of the ones I would like to see is the Suzuki Cappuccino.
Yeah, I actually like those.
Yeah, as you say, because the original Suzuki Cappuccino, again, was a mid-engined little two-seater drop-top, say a rival for the original Mazda MX-5, but even dinkier. And again, with an even smaller engine, it had a 3-cylinder 1-litre engine, I think. Or it might have even been smaller than a 1-litre engine.
Well, there was a couple of... It was a 657cc engine.
Yeah, well then there you go.
In that, which obviously is tiny, and they had two options. They had a 5-speed manual, which obviously is the one I'd have, but electric one you don't have that option, and a 4-speed automatic. But it's the weight that gets me to. It was 725 kilo.
Yeah, it's perfect for this.
Yeah. Now they were tiny lengthwise. They were only just a tiny bit longer than an original Mini.
Yeah.
So it means
it's only Denko.
Now, we couldn't find any of these for sale, unfortunately, in the UK. I'm sure you can find some, perhaps in Japan specifically, where it might have a bigger market for second-hand ones. But I actually love them. I really respect what they are. And perhaps something on the back of this would be a Daihatsu Copen. Do you know what they are? The tiny little, what I call noddy cars, in essence. The little roadster from Daihatsu. Cool. They were really small. I think they were a similar size to this.
But again, as you say, and I think these would really help, say, Suzuki's UK presence, actually, releasing something like that.
Yeah, I think it would, because they've got it with the Jimny, so they've got the really cool cult following with the Jimny, and they've got a waiting list on them. And if they brought out something maybe like this, because I know it was popular back in the day in Japan specifically, and a few people had them here, but I think they could address it.
But as you say, Suzuki clearly have an eye for creating cars that are cult following, cool little quirky things at a reasonable price. So I think if anybody could release a small electric car that had a bit of sort of like cutesy designs, relatively small package, and yeah, I think that they could certainly do a good job of sending it out there if their work with the Jimny is anything to show by.
Yeah, because that car's extremely capable, very cheap for what it can do, and it immediately has a cult following. So I think it's perfect. I think they could do a similar sort of job with this, and that'd be good. Just one little thing we were going to touch on as well, because obviously we know we've spoken about a few hydrogen things in the past and whatever, and I genuinely do believe hydrogen is a better alternative to electric. Provided they can make it work, actually do it properly, which in many cases they can. It's just a matter of time. I didn't know, and you pointed this out to me actually, that the Ford KA, because I was thinking originally that Ford should do a full electric version of the KA because it's a small, tiny little car to rival the likes of Minis, Fiat 500s, and all that gubbins. But I didn't know
to undercut them with price.
Yeah, well, they could quite easily. The Fiat 500 is quite expensive for what you get, as is the Mini. Obviously, the Mini's way too expensive. But the 4K, I didn't know they'd done a hydrogen version of it from the Mark II, which was in James Bond in Quantum of Solace.
Yeah, and it's interesting that if you rewatch that film, you'll realise that quite a few of the cars in there are hydrogen. So clearly it was something that they were experimenting with at the time. And we have done I think we did a podcast previously on the benefits and disbenefits of potentially going into
so if you haven't seen
technology.
that, go back and have a listen to that for it in a bit more detail. But I was putting this forward as like an electric car because obviously the size and what we're going up against. But then, like I say, you pointed that out and I had no idea. And well, obviously they never went any further with it for probably many reasons, but it shocked me that I didn't even notice.
But I think you're right, though, because obviously we've looked at the car, the one that you can buy in present day, and you can only get it with like the 1.2 four-cylinder engine, and it looks like it's in desperate need of a redo, to be honest.
100%. Like they did do the sort of kind of a semi-refresh of it, but it didn't work. They need to remake it again, a whole new car, because it does sell well. It's a popular car because obviously it's first cars and things like that, and do perhaps an electric variant of it.
That's what I mean. I think this is the perfect opportunity for them to reinvent the car, lean on some nostalgia that the original had to give it that bubbly, cute design.
Do you know one of the best cars I've had to go in was the sport car, like to drive. Really, really nippy little thing to drive and handled brilliantly.
Yeah, no, I seriously think that Ford have a good option there, to be honest. And again, they could go in against the Mini Electric and the Electric Fiat 500 and undercut them on price, give you the same sort of range and mileage, and I think it would sell very well.
100%, I think they should. But on that note, I do think it's probably a good place to end it. I'm getting hungry, so I'm going to get some food. But what we'll do is obviously we're back next week for another episode, and hopefully we can get this setup working again with the cameras on the same size, which would be ideal. But if you do have any topics you do want us to discuss, obviously while the car world is sort of on pause, if you're with me, just let us know in any of the social media links below, and we will do that for you. But if not, in the meantime, we will see you next week.
Yep.
Right, see you later.
Bye.
Bye.